welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. In day 2 of a conversation with Nan Su, a writer for the Epoch Times, an organization which is alleged to have connections to a religious organization on mainland China.
China going after Taiwan not because they want to unify Taiwan, but because China is doing a global expansion. China is really going after South China Sea. Now, here is what's going to happen. If China, South China Sea is like a little, it's like a little corridor, and then Taiwan is on the northern part of the, entrance of that corridor. So if China controls Taiwan, it will cap the South China Sea. And also China start building the man-made islands since 2013 in South China Sea. What they have done is they dump a massive amount of concrete to make those reefs in the South China Sea become island. Because a reef is something when you have high tides below water, when you have low tides above water. Based on the international law, no country can claim sovereignty of reef, but they can only claim sovereignty on the islands. So China make a reef become man-made island and then claim the sovereignty. Now, back in 2015, the Beijing's leader promised President Obama that they were never going to militarize those man-made islands. However, so far, out of 7 man-made islands, they already fully militarized the 3 of them. Now, if China controls Taiwan plus those man-made islands already militarized in the South China Sea, China will be in the great extent control the South China Sea. And once China controls South China Sea, China will be able to do 4 things. Number 1, China will choke the economic lifeline of Japan and South Korea. Japan is the world's 3rd largest economy, but however, our Japanese friends have some fatal weakness because it's an island nation. 1/3 of its GDP really depending on trade, and those trade, pretty much all need to go through Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. And number 2, if China controls South China Sea, then China will have a lot more say on global economy because every year you have total 10 trillion like a global trade, and more than 30% of them need to go through South China Sea. And number 3, if China controls South China Sea, China will have pretty much dominant influence on the Southeast Asia. Think about those countries in Southeast Asia. They are all around South China Sea, and right now, the Western corporations are relocating their supply chain out of China because they're escalating the geopolitical risk. Guess where they're going? They're either going India or Southeast Asia, and China doesn't want to let go its control of our supply chain. So that's why they're going after South China Sea. And number 4, if China controls South China Sea, there will be nobody there to stop China from going further south to make a threat against Australia, which is another very important ally of United States. So think about that. Why we need to defeat this kind of a threat from Chinese communist regime, because they are in the process to make a global expansion. Unless we just sit back and do nothing and just let the future generation here in the Western world, in the United States, should become the slave of China, of Chinese communist regime, then we need to do something because it gets too late.
Now, the United States and the United Kingdom in Europe and the United States have signed an agreement to work together with the Australians. The U.S. is supplying nuclear-powered submarines, although the weapons will be conventional. Are the Australians in any position, even with U.S. and U.K. help, in the position to make a significant difference in what China does, or will the Chinese simply disregard them because they don't think that the Australians have much of a resistance to anything to offer them?
Well, with talking about the kind of like war that will, break any time at Taiwan Strait. So, they will further making the threat, but the problem is how we are going to react. Are we going to just sit back and let China take Taiwan? Think about that. China's chairman Xi already make order to his military that he ordered the Chinese military need to be ready, fully ready by the year of 2027 to annex Taiwan. That's his order. Just like 3 weeks ago, the Secretary Treasurer Yellen was visiting Beijing, and while she was in Beijing, she was only in Beijing for 2 days. The first day she was in Beijing, meeting with China's Prime Minister. China's Chairman Xi was in the Chinese military's Eastern Theater. Now, Chinese military's Eastern Theater controls 5 provinces that's across the Taiwan Strait facing Taiwan. So Chairman Xi was there, speaking to the Chinese military and asked them to be ready to make a quick win. And the second day, when Yellen was in Beijing, the 43 Chinese military airplane, crossed the midpoint of Taiwan Strait, make direct approach of Taiwan. So, around Taiwan Strait, those kind of behavior right now, it's routine. It's like it happen any day, any time.
If it can happen at any day and any time, then would the American response be effective, or would we simply be sideline observers without any real influence whatsoever?
Well, we have to defend Taiwan. I already state why Taiwan is so important, and I mentioned several reasons we cannot lose Taiwan, and plus, and then another very important reason is Taiwan manufactures like 70% of the most advanced semiconductor chips. That's another reason on top of the things we already talked about. Now, U.S. military is quickly increasing its strength in Japan as well as in Philippines. The northern part of the Philippines, it's like less than 100 miles from Taiwan from the south, and then on the north and the southern part of Japan, the several islands. Those are also about the same distance. That's on the to the northern part of Taiwan. So from north and from the south, U.S. military is trying to provide support to defeat the invasion, any potential invasion from Chinese military. And so there are a lot of things going on there. U.S. Air Force General Mike Minihan, he predicted the direct military conflict between China and the United States could happen as early as 2025. And then there are other U.S. military general predict that could be 2027, while our political leaders in Washington, they say, well, probably not going to happen before 2030. Now, think about this. None of these people talk about if. All of them only talk about when. For
a listener who would want to pursue that, then where do you direct them to find out further information about what you're talking about, sir?
Well, then, go to ThatEpochTimes.com. That's just one word, ThatEpochTimes.com.
Thank you very much, Nansu, for making yourself available for this conversation today, sir.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for having me.
That concludes this 2-part series about the Epoch Times view on mainland China. The newspaper is alleged to have connections to a religious organization on the mainland of China. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049. Opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.